Hey friends, welcome to The Intuitive Mother. This week I wanted to chat with you about the word trust. And I just invite all of you that are listening or watching, if you are able, take a moment and think about a time in your life as a mother when you knew something was wrong, but you allowed outside voices to override your inner knowing, and you broke that trust with yourself by listening to those outside voices. So just take a moment and think about that, whether it be now or after this episode. That's up to you. But I know that I have been there. I can tell you firsthand many, many times throughout motherhood, I knew something was off, whether it was the way my daughter seemed to be acting, and I knew she was upset, but she wasn't telling me that, and she was putting on a brave face, or if it dates back to the time when our youngest was in the hospital for RSV and pneumonia, just in the ER, but I knew at home she wasn't well. And I listened to my mom and my husband and overrode my feelings and my inner knowing and stopped trusting what I knew to be true because I didn't want to be seen as a worrywart. And, so many instances stand out where if I had just trusted myself and my own inner knowing, we would have had a smoother time, whether that was getting our daughter to the hospital earlier or helping our daughter through a transition to a new school at an earlier time. All of it really came back to how much I trusted myself and my own inner knowing, which I share with you on previous episodes. Your inner knowing is your intuition. And in order to have a strong inner knowing and intuition, you have to build up your trust in that inner knowing. You have to be willing to take a stand and say, I know something's not right. I'm going to trust that feeling inside, and I'm going to step out and ask my daughter, or I know that this path would be a better path for my daughter. So I'm going to stand behind her and trust that she knows the right path for her. All of that comes back to building a foundation of trust within ourselves, within our family, and teaching our daughters to build that within themselves. And that trust is a major point of our intuition because we have to have it, I believe, in order to truly follow our own inner knowing. I also believe that in order to follow that inner knowing and really build that trust, we really have to start from a place of who are you as a mom, as a woman? What do you believe in? What are your values? For me, one of my greatest values is respect. I would have thought it was love, but actually, respect and freedom and love, they're all there, but respect is huge for me. It comes up time and time again. It's actually when I'm disrespected, a trigger pops right up in my body. Like I can feel it. And I know that whether it's between my daughters and I, and somebody rolls an eye and that feels disrespectful, I feel triggered. And, there could be so many other ways, whether that's, another one I can think of is when my husband and I are both parenting and maybe have different viewpoints, and I say something first, and then he says what he believes or how he would parent through that. Sometimes I take that as disrespect and then I feel triggered again. So that is to share with you how to really hone in on what are your beliefs and your values. Who are you inside? How are you raised? Where are your wounds that you maybe needs some healing around. And that healing can be easy. It can be hard, but where do you need healing within where you're operating from? Where does your wound start to show up when you're mothering? And as you get to know yourself and you sit and you ask those questions, what are my values? What are my beliefs? Where do I get triggered? What are my wounds? What am I carrying with me from my own childhood? Or what am I carrying with me from generations before in my family? And sit with those questions and start to really establish that strong foundation in who you are. And I believe when you do that, you really build that foundational piece of trusting yourself and being able to trust your intuition, because you know who you are, you know you're operating out of love, and you can really just stand in your true presence of you and who you are. I also believe that in order to do all of that, we need to slow down and take a breath and remember who we are. We need to remember who we are when someone is challenging us on what's right or wrong for our daughter. And maybe that's a guidance counselor at school or whatever, and they feel this path is good for our kid and we know it's another path. If we slow down and we remember who we are, how we've raised our kids, I believe then we are better prepared to stand in our truth and trust that truth. Trust our inner knowing that we know who we are and what's best because we've raised them. And our daughters also know who they are, and they stand in their truth because of that strong foundation of trusting themselves. So take some time and do this. How are you operating? Are you operating in trust of what you say as a mom or as a woman? Or are you allowing other people's judgments to pop in and break down the trust in yourself? Break away, or sort of like hammer down your own inner knowing. It's trying to break that away when you listen to so much of what society is saying, instead of just standing in, I know this is my truth, I know what I'm feeling, and I trust it. Sort of a good story, I think, with this is we all get butterflies in our stomach, or we just don't feel right. I mean, how many of us have said to our kids at some point, if you ever feel like something doesn't feel right in your stomach, you need to follow where that's leading you. This would be that case. We know inside. Don't let society, don't let other people's judgments pop in and break away at your own trust in yourself. This is the foundation of then building that. When we know who we are, we're then building the trusted home base with our daughters. When our daughters can trust that they can come to us with concerns, with conversations that are not easy, with ideas, inspiration, excitement, sadness, when they can come with all of that because they know that we're operating. And it's not like we have to tell them, hey, yeah, I make sure that I'm operating from a place of trust every day. I mean, it's not always in so many words, but it's they know. They know when we're operating from that calm home base and when we are more connected with ourselves. My oldest daughter will often look at me and say, you're overwhelmed right now. And that is sort of a key to just not even have a conversation, but check back in with myself. Tune in, tap in, feel into what's coming up for me. Am I overwhelmed? Is it just something like the puppy has to go out and I have a lot on my plate? Or is there something between her and I? But knowing that she witnesses when that switch is for within me, and she's able to call it out, creates that safe home base of being able to say, hey, mom, like, you're overwhelmed, and, I want you to know I see it. And, I know then we should have this conversation at a later time, or I should at least tune in, tap in, slow down, remember, and breathe. All of it goes together. And that home base of them knowing that they are respected and loved and trusted as part of our family's foundation of trusting ourselves, and all of us operating from our own inner knowing, I believe is such a great impact on growing a bond with your daughter that's like unbreakable. That you can have moments that seem crazy, difficult, full of tears even, but the home base is still so rock solid, and they know they can always come back to it, and they trust that it's there, and they trust that our home operates from that place of what's best for us. I have seen this firsthand really make such a large impact on how I mother and how my daughters and I interact, and even how my husband and I interact, and how we parent and are, a couple. There were years where I was operating more, guess you would say, from my wounds, fight or flight, like all over the place, and not really coming home and just honoring who I am and where I am. And it created an unstable home base. It didn't mean that our family was falling apart. It didn't mean that we had, no foundation. It was just that it was more unstable. It was hard for them to know what home base was if there was nothing that they could trust, because they saw it show up time and time again in the same way that we operate from respect. We operate from love. We operate with grace in our house. Those all of those beliefs that are true to you become true to how you raise your family, and you integrate them into building your family up and raising your family. And they know that that's their home base to come back to. And those all feed into who they are and following their inner knowing for what's best for them, because they know they can trust coming home to that home base. So now let's tie together knowing who you are as a mom deep inside, building a trusted home base for your family so that your daughters know they have somewhere to come back to that they can trust, that they know operates from a place of truth, and how that then ties into your daughter trusting herself. And I believe that's one of the greatest things we want for our children. One of the most proud moments when you realize that your daughter stands for herself, trusts who she is, and doesn't necessarily give in to societal norms, because she's operating from in here, in her heart, in what she knows is right for her, not what's right for all of her classmates or her best friend, or even what was right for mom, but what's right for her. And trusting herself begins by modeling that we're trusting each other, we're trusting ourselves. All of us are trusting ourselves first and foremost, because when we trust ourselves, we're listening within. We're operating from that place of stillness where we are present and we know what's coming up, and we know what feels right and wrong, and what we sense and what makes us happy and pulls us to joy and excitement, or what brings us sadness and doesn't make us feel happy. And when we're able to operate from that place within, and then together as a family, and respect each other within that family unit, for each having our own inner knowing and our own truth, but yet loving each other through it, really helps to build your daughter up to a place of trusting herself, trusting in who she stands for, what she stands for, and knowing that her intuition is her guiding light in life. That if you raise her with trust in herself, and that being trusting her own intuition, she's going to make the right decision when her friends are maybe offering a drink at a party and she knows that that's not something that she wants for herself. She's more willing to stand up to peer pressure. She's going to follow that inner knowing when she knows that college isn't her choice, but that she has more excitement over traveling and seeing the world before settling into college, or before starting a business, or moving, or getting married and starting a family. She can trust who she is because you taught her to trust who she is, because you modeled to trust who you were, and how your family all comes together into one home base unit for them to witness day in and day out, feel safe, held, and loved in day in and day out, and really creates that sacred space for her to hold herself in her own inner knowing and trust that she's operating from that place, and that is the only place she should be making decisions from. She should, be sharing, because she just knows to not give in to the judgments. And I know that this sounds far stretched, because there's a part of me that feels, some of you could be watching it and think, you're right. Teenagers tuning into themselves over listening to what their friends are doing, that sounds crazy. But I promise you, I've seen it firsthand with my daughter. She came home to herself within 1 year, had walked away from an athletic sport at school, like high school athletics, and never looked back, because she knew what was true for her. She fills her days now with art and yoga and truly loves everything she's doing. And I know she has stood up to her classmates, to friends, for what she believes in, which is oftentimes way against the norm. She's a vegan. She's very much so aware and an advocate for climate change and our environment and animal rights. And she goes up against this because she knows it's her own inner knowing of what's right and wrong, what she believes in, what, makes her heart beat faster or makes her tears come to her eyes. And I believe when we're raising them to get to that point, they are going to be able to be released from our home as they go off to college, as they move out and travel, as they start a business, as they get married. And we're going to know that they're always going to remember to come back and trust themselves if they're in a situation when they're not sure where to go, that the answer is always within, that our intuition, we're always sensing, knowing, thinking, feeling, we're always in touch with that inner guidance system, our true north, our compass. We just have to set the stage up from a young age all the way through to remember to come home to yourself, to remember to listen and remember who you are. And that when you operate from that place and you trust it, and having that trust in it is so important in order to raise them to step out into the world and be who they are and make the impact on the world that we know they can, and that they're here to live out in their purpose. So I hope this episode brought light to your day and thoughts and inspiration on tuning in, tapping in to your own intuition and sharing it and how you are doing it, and setting that example for your family, for your unit of a family, creating that safe home base where everything relies on trusting your intuition, all of you together, and ends up with your daughters and even your sons, if you're listening, stepping out into the world, trusting themselves, and knowing that following their intuition relies on them to trust that that inner knowing is always going to be right. So I do hope it brought you little tidbits that will make you think, make you maybe open up conversation with your daughter about trusting herself and always following what she knows to be true and what she knows to be right for her. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will chat with you again next week. Bye-bye.